Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women. That is good.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Radio.
Welcome back. Welcome back to another week of Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio. I'm Shane Stacks. I'm your host. So excited to be here with you. You can always call in at 501-823-0965. That's 501-823-0965. That's whether you're listening live here in Little Rock on 96.5 FM The Answer, or you're streaming via the 96.5 FM TheAnswer.com website, or using the TuneIn Radio or iHeartRadio apps. So you can always call the number 501-823-0965. You can also tweet me at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays. Don't forget you can support the show. You don't have to, but you can if you want. On Patreon, you can pledge as little as $1 per show. That's patreon.com/ShanePlays. There's also a podcast. It's always up as soon as possible after the show on ShanePlays.com. And you can also find us on iTunes. So just look for the Shane Plays podcast, which you can, like I said, you can always find it on ShanePlays.com. Speaking of, there's notes and links for today's show right now up on ShanePlays.com for your convenience as you listen along. You can, click on those and kind of keep up with what I'm talking about. So we're going to have a good show today. We're going to talk about some news. They're going to talk about, I'm going to rant a little bit and share my thoughts on how the Hulk versus Iron Man fight went in Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. And I'll also share my thoughts on how the Flash Season 1 TV show ended and how I would have liked to have ended it. And then we're going to have a interview with the writer-producer, Matt Barton, and the director, Richard Goldgevish, of Gameplay the Movie, a video game documentary. That'll finish out the show. So it's going to be a good show today. Make sure to stay listening, stay tuned. But first, we've got some news. And the first, of course, big one is Christopher Lee, the well-known actor of many decades, has died at age 93. Christopher Lee, of course, was in the Hammer horror films, about 20 of them, I believe. He was Saruman in the Lord of the Rings movies, and he was also Count Dooku, or Lord Tyrannus, Darth Tyrannus. It was his Darth name in the Star Wars prequel movies. And he's just a fascinating guy. He did heavy metal music and that sort of thing. Fascinating guy, fascinating presence, fascinating voice. And he's gone at the age of 93. So we will definitely miss his presence in our entertainment. And I wish his family and friends well at this time. So TV news, there's lots of TV news today. The Constantine TV show is now officially canceled, according to executive producer Daniel Cerrone. I think I'm saying that right. Once again, you can find these links and notes at ShanePlays.com as we go. So the Constantine show ran for one season, I think a pretty short season, and it's not being renewed. And I guess they shopped it around, tried to find a place for it, and it's almost becoming a cliche these days of fans, lobbying and doing petitions to try to bring the show back, and it's not happening. So, I watched a couple episodes of the show, and it was all right. I didn't like it or dislike it, but I will say that the guy who played Constantine, I thought, was great. I thought he nailed the character, and I'm a big fan of the Constantine character since back in the 80s, mid-80s, when Alan Moore introduced him in Swamp Thing. I just loved everything about the character. That kind of punk rock, British, trench coat wearing, smart aleck, cigarette smoking, supernatural kind of detective guy. I don't know. I liked him a lot. And I thought that the guy who plays him in the TV show, or played him, I thought nailed the character about as well as it could be nailed. Both in appearance and in, how he acted and everything. I was pretty impressed. The show's not coming back. Now, the X-Files, as you know, or probably know, is coming back. People are very excited. I think it's for like a 6-episode season or something. It's not a full season, but it's not just like, a reunion movie. It's a few episodes. And I guess it's officially happening now. Is it Gillian Anderson, I think, the lady that plays Scully? she tweeted on Twitter, of course, that's where you tweet, and said, hey, this is like really happening. And it showed two of, those actors' chairs that, it's like the fold out canvas chair with names on it. And one said, Mulder, and one said Scully, which is, of course, the names of the two characters, the FBI agents from the X-Files. So evidently the filming is underway. A couple more TV. There's a lot of TV news this week, so I want to share this with you. I found two things on Netflix that are just really cool. I want to share them with you. And if you go to shaneplays.com, I've got the links. If you got a Netflix account, just click on the links. It'll take you straight to this content on Netflix. One is there's this famous old classic movie. It was in like 1908 or 1909. It was called A Trip to the Moon. And it's just considered a classic, epic, not epic, but just incredibly well-known, influential movie from that time period of the silent movies. And it literally shows a group of scientists, astronomers, whatever, going to the moon in a big bullet. And there's that sort of famous image of the bullet ship kind of banging into the man in the moon's eye, and he's kind of like, ow. Well, there's a colorized version on Netflix, and that in and of itself is pretty neat. Evidently, it was originally done in color. Back then, they would go in and literally paint each cell of the film and make them colorized, even though they couldn't film in color. But that was lost. They've restored it. And there's also a soundtrack to this by this band called Air. And it's so cool. I've watched it like twice already. I'll probably watch it again. It's just very cool and trippy, I guess, is the best word that I know to explain. It's just trippy. And I really enjoyed it. I totally recommend it. It's pretty rare for something just totally unexpected and new to come along and knock me over. And this one did. So I totally recommend it. It's called A Trip to the Moon. It's the colorized version with the soundtrack by Air. It's only like 15 minutes, and I would totally recommend checking this thing out. It's very cool. The next thing that I found on Netflix this week and watched was there's a documentary on comic strips, and I'm a huge, not just comic books, but comic strips. I'm a huge comic book strips fan, have been since I was a little kid. That was what I always went to and still do pretty much in the paper, go straight to the comic strips. And there's a documentary called Stripped. Once again, the link is on the show notes at shaneplays.com. And it's a documentary on, comic strips and what's happening with newspapers right now and what the future of comic strips will probably be. Hint, hint, the internet. And it also features this is very rare. If you understand Bill Watterson from Calvin and Hobbes, it's very rare for him to do any sort of interview or publicity or anything like that. And he did. He does an audio. There's clips of some audio interview with Bill Watterson in this. So it's called Stripped. It's a documentary on Netflix. And if you love comic strips at all, sequential art, I would definitely check it out. So can't recommend that enough. And yet more. There's a lot of TV news this week. In July 28th, there's a new Justice League animated film, which I've been watching them all. They're quite good. For the past several years, even the quote unquote bad ones are pretty good. I didn't catch the DC animated universe when it was on, but I've been watching, Batman, Superman, Justice League, United, all the animated movies, and I've become a very big fan of the animated universe. And there's a new one coming out July 28th called Gods and Monsters, Justice League Gods and Monsters, and it's an alternative take by Bruce Timm, no less. The kind of the father of the DC animated universe. That it's from him, and what it does is it gives a different take on Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman. For example, Superman's Kryptonian, but he's actually the son of Zod. So he's not Clark Kent. He's not Kal-El. He's the son of General Zod, who's traditionally an enemy of Superman. And then Wonder Woman is not an Amazonian. She's not from Paradise Island. She's from New Genesis. She's a new god, Jack Kirby's New Gods comic books. And in Batman, I won't tell you who he is, but quite different. So I say probably some people probably call this Machinima. I'm going to call it Machinima. I think that's how you pronounce it. Machinima is, of course, is when you take game engines and make, animations out of them. But there's a content channel out there called Machinima on YouTube, and they have shorts getting ready for these, for Gods and Monsters. And one of them is Batman versus Harley Quinn. It's called Twisted. Another one is called Superman versus Brainiac, and it's called Bomb. And another one's called Wonder Woman, and it's Big. And all three of these, if you go to the Machinima YouTube channel, you can watch all these shorts to get ready for the Gods and Monsters that's coming out next month, at the end of next month. So definitely pay attention to that if you're into that. And there's also a link in the show notes. Bruce Timm talks about how he's making Batman in sort of the universe that he's always wanted to make but wasn't allowed to until now. So keep in mind these are a bit darker than the usual DC animated style. So but they're quite good. I definitely would recommend them. So I think we're kind of moving out of TV now. I'll throw a couple of other news items, and we got a big bombshell news item coming here in a couple of minutes that I'll wrap up on. So make sure to be paying attention to that. But first, and also this is in the show notes. Don't forget to go to ShanePlays.com and check the show notes. A Superfan has spent $50,000 to create an Elder Scrolls basement. Elder Scrolls, the video game, the fantasy RPG video game. He spent $50,000 to create it. That's out of control. But there's pictures and whatnot on the thing. It looks pretty good. I mean, I don't think I'd spend $50,000 on that, but it blows. And this guy's also a DC Comics artist, so that's kind of interesting. All right, and last but not least, this is big. This is so huge. Star Wars original script proves hand shot first. Proves it. It's a version of the script before it was finalized. A librarian found it, and it shows that hand shot first. So finally, we can put the debate to rest. I mean, I've always known hand shot first because I remember seeing that in the movies before Lucas changed it. But beyond a shadow of a doubt, the script that's been found shows that Han Solo shot first. He blew Greedo away before Greedo shot. So we could put this to rest. Star Wars fans rejoice. Now, when we come back, I'm going to rant a little bit on the Iron Man and Hulk fight in Avengers 2, and I'm going to talk about how Flash TV Season 1 ended. And then after that, we're going to have an interview with Matt and Richard for Gameplay the Movie. But first, when we come back, we'll talk about rants and ponderings and thoughts. But first, we're going to take a quick break and pay the bills. Stick around.
Privately owned and licensed by the Arkansas State Police, Rock City Alarm Company has been in business since 1996, specializing in sales, installation, servicing, and monitoring of burglar alarms and fire alarms for the state of Arkansas. Rock City Alarm provides service for residential and commercial alarms, and now provides cellular monitoring with remote arm and disarm. Just call John Hardiman at 501-541-8747. That's John Hardiman at 501-541-8747. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Call Chapman Service today for all your air conditioning and electrical concerns. 0% financing till January 2020 for a limited time. Voted best of the best for 5 years in a row. It's hard to stop a train. Chapman Service, all you want in an air conditioning and an electrical company. Nothing you don't.
All right. So that was the voice of Jacob running the Starship Enterprise in there with all the bells and whistles. Kendall sets in with us sometimes. He's out. But Jacob is keeping everything together. You guys, it's amazing what it takes to do a radio show. This stuff doesn't just happen, and I appreciate my producers so very much. So thanks, Jacob. Appreciate you. All right, so now we're going to rant. If there's one thing, I love to flap my lips about geeky stuff, and all geeks love to rant. So I'm going to rant a little bit and just kind of share my thoughts. The first thing I'm going to rant on is if you don't like spoilers, Sorry. I mean, the movies have been out for a while. The Flash show is over for the season. So if you don't like spoilers, you may want to tune out or plug your ears for the next 10 minutes. But I think the spoiler time has passed for both of these. But I call bull snookies on how the Iron Man and Hulk fight ended in Avengers 2 Age of Ultron. All right? I just don't agree. So it was a good fight. It was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. But the Hulk in the movies, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, must be different than the Hulk in the comic books. Because in the comic books, and one of the things that makes the Hulk, and they've had a lot of different iterations of the Hulk, okay, in the comics. Sometimes he's smarter and not as strong. Sometimes he's dumb as a rock and super strong. It just depends. There's all these different iterations, but the version they have in the movies is dumb, strong Hulk. Okay. That's all there is to it. He's dumb. He's a rage monster, and he's incredibly strong, and you basically can't kill him. He's invulnerable. And that version of the Hulk is the stronger or the madder Hulk gets, the stronger Hulk gets. So that's how it's always been in the comic books. So, like I said, they must have changed it a little bit for the movies, because for the fight was amazing, but for Tony Stark in his Iron Man gear to be able to just knock the Hulk out at the end of the fight with a bang over the head, I just completely disagree with it. I would have been better off if they would have immobilized him somehow, or, encased him in some sort of thing that kept him from moving, or used his own strength against him. But to have this big knockdown brawl, which was a great brawl, like I said, don't get me wrong, it was one of the best sequences in the movie. And like I said, if you agree or disagree with me, you can call in at 501-823-0965. That's 501-823-0965. And you can tweet me at Shaneplays. That's ShanePlays. But anyway, for him to knock him out at the end with a blow over the head, I just disagree. Totally. So, like I said, loved the sequence. The fight was great. The Hulkbuster armor, the satellite sending down, extra power-ups, if you will, or replacing stuff that, like a glove of or a gauntlet of the armor got destroyed, so he replaces it. And I love that he was just banging him in the face, when Tony Stark's just banging him in the face with like that kind of pile driver, and he's like, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. Like I said, great sequence. But the end of it, where they're, the building collapsed, and they're in the building, and then Tony Stark just, in his Iron Man armor, just bangs him over the head, and the Hulk goes to sleep with little birdies around. No, I don't agree. So, that's my geek rant on that. Like I said, I do think that the Hulk, whether he's in the movies or in the comic books, can be immobilized, or stuff can happen, technology or whatever can slow him down or immobilize him, but to just flat knock him out like that, I just don't agree with. So, I just don't. So I think we got a caller coming in, but we don't. Okay. We don't have a caller coming in. Okay. But so that's my take on that. I don't agree. If somebody else out there thinks that it's kosher, that Iron Man just banged the Hulk over the head and he knocked him out, at the end of the fight, I just disagree with you, man. We're going to have a fanboy disagreement. So, but again, the sequence was good. That was probably one of my favorite sequences in the movie. By the way, Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, in my opinion, was not as good as the first Avengers. It was an over-the-top, crazy action movie. But to me, it didn't seem to have the heart of the first movie. It just didn't. There was a scene at the beginning where they're all trying to lift Thor's hammer. That felt like the heart of the first movie. But the rest of it was just like so over the top. It was almost like, it was almost like some of the Transformers action movies. There's so much is going on. I just feel assaulted, and I can barely even tell what's going on at that moment in the scene. But like I said, I liked the movie. Don't get me wrong. I just didn't like it as much as the first one. Now, on to The Flash. The Flash TV series, season 1 was excellent. Very impressed with this movie. It was on the CW. It could have easily been watered down teen romance something. It wasn't. It has moments in it where they kind of shoehorn in, they'll be like, oh, we're dead in 5 hours. The entire world's going to blow up. I got to run over and talk to my girlfriend real quick. So they do kind of work some of that stuff in. But the overall plot, actors, characters, special effects is really good. And I just want to share, here's how I wish that the season would have ended. Okay, spoilers. Reverse Flash, who was Professor Wells, their mentor, who built Star Labs, it was Eobard Thawne, who came from the future. He basically gets wiped out of the timeline at the end. All right, and as part of the show, what you have to understand is Eobard Thawne got stuck in the past. He's the Reverse Flash. He's the Flash's enemy. And he found the real Professor Wells and used this device that killed Professor Wells but transformed Eobard Thawne genetically to where he looked and sounded just like Wells. So he took over his life. And then he built Star Labs and all this other stuff because it had to happen so the Flash could be created, which would help Reverse Flash and some other. I'm not going to go into all that. But here's what I would love to have happened. The character of Professor Wells was so good as a mentor all throughout series 1 or the first series until, they found out he was the bad guy. And then, he changed. Even then he was still charismatic and fascinating on screen. But the mentor character of Professor Wells was so good. Now it seems to be is it Professor Dayton, I think, who was half of Firestorm with Ronnie Raymond. He kind of played this role a little bit in the finale, like this older, wise scientist kind of mentor type. But Professor Wells was so good at it. Loved his character. Here's what I wish they would have done if I were writing The Flash, which I'm not. Said I'm just on the radio flapping my lips about it. What I would have done was I would have allowed that genetic transfer that the Eobard Thawne did on Wells to also transfer his personality and memories, but it was suppressed. And somehow it would have been so great if that would have come out at the end. And instead of wiping out the Reverse Flash, Professor Wells' personality dominated and Eobard Thawne was suppressed. So then you get Professor Wells back, right? And he's like, oh, I've lost 5 years of my life and it died, but yet he's still kind of the mentor. And then, you have this continuing fascinating struggle between Eobard Thawne and Professor Wells' personality to see who's going to be in control. And that way you get the best of both worlds and you get Wells back, who is such a great character. So that's how I would have done it. But that's not how they did it, which is fine. It's a very good show. I'm looking forward to series 2 or season 2, which, they're already teasing some stuff and it sounds pretty cool. All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking with Matt and Richard from Gameplay the Movie, which is the story of the video game revolution documentary on video games. We're going to take a quick break, pay the bills, and when we come back, we're going to have Matt and Richard from Gameplay the Movie. So, Jacob, let's pay the bills real quick.
Did you know that your business can provide its employees with the same benefits packages as even the largest Fortune 500 companies, often at no direct cost to you, the business owner, and while saving money at the same time? If you've always thought that you would like to offer those big company benefits to your employees but thought that there was no way, let our team at the Macom Teague Agency come by and show you how it can be possible and how simple it is to put into place. We offer major medical and group and individual plans, on or off exchange, dental and vision, life products, cancer, accident, and more. These benefits create that ever so priceless commodity known as loyalty. And yes, we are ACA certified. We even offer these same benefits on the individual basis if you're just a one-person entrepreneur or making things happen on your own. Give us a call today at 501-838-6827 to schedule your no-obligation on-site consultation. The Macom Teague Agency is serving all of Arkansas and surrounding states. 501-838-6827. Give us 1% of your trust, and we'll earn the other 99. Comic book lovers, Michael Tierney's local comic book stores meet all of your comic book needs with friendly service. visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock or Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock. And don't forget to click on over to the wildstars.com website. I personally have been a customer of Michael's since the mid-'80s, and I trust him for my reserve list still today. Michael knows comics. In addition to being in business for 34 years, he has written multiple columns for comic magazines, is an Overstreet price guide advisor, and publishes his own comic book series, The Wild Stars. Trust me, these stores are run by a comic book lover for comic book lovers. Remember, for all of your comic book needs with friendly service and to get your copies of The Wild Stars, make sure to visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock or Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock, and visit thewildstars.com to learn more.
We're back. This is Shane with Shane Plays. We should have on the phones, we should have Matt Barton, who is the writer-producer for Gameplay the Movie. And we should have, and I asked Richard earlier how to pronounce this, and I'm going to mess it up. Richard, I apologize in advance. Richard Goldgivish. Is that right? I'm not sure that we have him, Jacob. I see him on the line. There's Matt, and there's Richard. Okay, you guys with me?
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Hi. Okay, got both you guys. I don't know if y'all just heard me introduce you, so I'll do it again. And folks, by the way, if you like what you hear, or if you have a question for Matt or Richard or myself over the next 25 minutes while we have this interview, we can't take calls because both of our phone lines are locked down, but you can tweet at shaneplays.com, or no, not .com, just at shaneplays. And I know that Matt has a Twitter at Matt Barton as well. So maybe you can reach us that way. Or you can email me at shaneplays.com, and I'll keep an eye on that. So, all right, so I'm going to do the intros again. We have Matt Barton, who's a writer-producer, and then we have Richard Goldgivish. Is that correct, Richard?
That's right. You're right.
Okay, great. Now, Richard is the director of Gameplay the Movie, which is a documentary on the story of the video game revolution. And Matt actually it wrote some books as a co-author with a collaborator, and those books, I guess, kind of became what this movie is. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's kind of every author's dream, I guess. Get your book made into a movie. It's pretty much what happened.
Right. Now, if you don't know, now, Richard, I went and researched you, and, you know, you've got some pretty good credits under your belt, and you've got a documentary where it's called Pablo, where I think Beau Bridges has done the narration for you.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges. Okay. I was thinking it was Jeff Bridges. Yeah, I thought it was Jeff Bridges, but then I looked again today, and I thought it said Beau Bridges in the credits. So,
Beau Bridges is also in the movie, but Jeff is the narrator, and lots of other interesting actors and filmmakers as well.
That's fascinating. I mean, I love Jeff Bridges, and I wish we could talk about him for 30 minutes. I love his voice. I could just listen to it all day long. But that's
nice connection to gaming too.
Is it on Jeff? Yeah, exactly.
I'm not
with Tron.
The game right now.
Yeah, with Tron, exactly. I didn't even catch that. Okay, so.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, with Tron. Now, Matt, I call Matt the video game professor. Matt writes books on video games. I first probably became aware of him. No, I think I knew of your Matt Chat interview series first, and because of that, I got your Dungeons and Desktops book. But, you've got a lot of books under your belt. You do weekly interviews with game developers on your Matt Chat show on YouTube. And you're also an actual PhD is it the University of St. Cloud? Which university are you with there, Matt?
Yeah, St. Cloud State University in Minnesota.
So you're actually a PhD that teaches not all you do is teach video games, but you teach video games as part of your classes, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, and we'll have Matt as a recurring guest on the show. We're actually friends outside the show, so I want to have him on. But make sure to check out Matt Chat on YouTube and see his interviews with game developers. And if you go to shaneplays.com, in the show notes, there's links to the Gameplay the Movie website, and there's also links to Matt's website and his YouTube channel. And then there's links to Richard's website and also his IMDb page. So All right, guys.
It's a fire hose of content.
Yeah, just a pure. It's like drinking from a water hose. So here's what I want to know. Here's what fascinates me. Now, I did watch gameplay this week, and I liked it a lot. Okay.
What do you think of our Hulk Iron Man battle?
Yeah. Did you hear my rant on the Hulk Iron Man battle?
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think on that, Matt? Should Iron Man be able to knock the Hulk out?
I don't know.
I don't know. I call bull snookies, but people have different opinions. So, well, here's what I want to know. And I have some comments on the documentary, which I liked a lot. I'll share them as we go. You know, and a good documentary can make any subject fascinating, right? I mean, I've seen documentaries on basically like a cup of dirt that were fascinating, but this one is close to my heart because one, it's a good documentary, but two, it's about a subject that I love, which is video games and how they change things and where they're going. So I have some comments on that, but I wanted to ask you to, how did this go from being some books that Matt helped co-write to a documentary? How did that happen?
Do you want to start, Matt?
Do you want to answer that, Richard, or do you want me to?
Well, Matt initiated the project with Bill Watterson, and I came into it a little bit later and helped shape the final version of the film. So I guess the book was the starting point, and then we developed the story from there. You know, going through the development of the historical development of the film, and then kind of touching on more social ideas or how it's impacting society, and you know, and the play of video games in today's technology, and how it's paving the world for future technology. So I think it was kind of an organic development, I could say.
All right. What about? Did you want to add anything to that, Matt?
That sounds pretty good to me. I just, the company that did the movie had before done a sort of a similar thing about horror films. I think that's called Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good idea. I guess the idea was you could make a movie or a documentary using lots of clips of video games and such. And so it's pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Economical topic, I guess.
Yeah, there's clause, the fair use clause that allows lots of U.S. documentarians to lean on footage from other sources to tell their story. So we were able to tell the story, basically string along clips from video games and, of course, the great interviews that we've gotten. So, structuring the film is fairly simple, but I think it tells a very vast story.
So they approached, and I'm trying to understand, I know there's a process behind everything. This stuff doesn't just happen. Like they approached, it sounds like Matt and Bill approached a company that did documentaries, and by talking with them, you were contacted, Richard, to be the director?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. I didn't know that you could do that. I didn't know that you could contact companies and say, I have an idea for a documentary and get it rolling. That's actually pretty cool. So,
Well, I had actually been in touch with the producer of the film, on Pablo, and he knew of my work, and gave me a call, and it was an interesting turn of events that I was able just to jump in and help finish the movie.
No, but that's really cool. How long does it take? I mean, how long did it take to put this documentary together? I'm not talking about I'm not talking about finding the distributors. I'm just talking about to actually do the movie.
I think it took about 4 or 5 years.
I was in it for about a couple of years.
Really?
I think. Yeah. A lot of the work was editorial, right? Just shaping the story in the editing room, and also hiring out an animation company in Chile who came in and did the animation that you.
Well, movie. Now that you're mentioning the animation,
it took so long to make the movie. We had this bit at the end about this sort of the future of gaming, and
right.
We had to go back and redo that whole sequence because I think
everything had changed.
Check out this new console.
Yeah, it's like
that.
I wondered about that because I was like, this is still pretty relevant. I knew it took a couple of years to get distribution, and I was like, well, when they're kind of tying it up on where things are going, this is still pretty current. So I did notice that. So Richard, you mentioned the animation, I love the animation in this documentary. I think it really helps it.
Good.
I think it really helps it stand out. In fact, that was one of the things I had written down to mention to you. Was I loved both. There was sort of this 3D, boxy, pixelated kind of style, and then there was this stylistic kind of 2D animations that used a lot of like silhouettes and everything. And I loved them both. It was weird that those two different kinds of styles kind of worked together. But I think if people like animation, they should watch this documentary just to see the animated scenes that kind of tie everything together. I
work with his art director called Sebastian Pagagi in Santiago in Chile.
Right.
And we came up with that look, and to his tribute, I think he did a great job as well. Yeah, he unified the vision of the film, and certainly, when you're making a documentary, it's a good idea to have some sort of art direction to tie it all together, so it doesn't feel like it's just a collection of shots. So there's a unified vision there.
Right.
And I agree. I mean, the 3D shots were also very exciting. Of course, we had to limit them based on the our budget constraints, but for the most part, I think we're able to tell the story there and keep it moving.
All right. So go ahead.
Yeah, and we kept the sense of that one character, the recurring character that sort of kind of journeys through the video games from the 70s onwards, right, and into the future. Right.
No, I thought I liked it a lot. I was very impressed.
Yeah, it's really nice because I've seen a lot of the versions before they had the animation put in. Holy cow, does that make a difference?
Yeah. Well, like Richard said, it provides a overarching kind of narrative, right, that kind of pulls everything together. And it just so happens to also be extremely easy on the eyes. So, well done. So I liked it a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that kind of helps it, because there are other video game documentaries out there. And I think
really?
one or two. But I think that the art style, really helps set this apart. And you also, you guys were able to get some interviews with some pretty high profile people. Now, was that archive footage, or did y'all go interview people?
No, those were original interviews.
Okay. Because you had Nolan Bushnell, you had John Romero, some others, and what's that?
We had David Crane in there too.
Yeah, David. I mean, you had some pretty high profile folks. That one of my questions: how hard is it to get access to folks like that when you're doing a movie like this? They're like, oh yeah, or they're like, oh, okay. I mean, you have to go through 8 layers of secretaries, or I mean, what happens here?
For the most part, it was pretty easy. Oh, sorry, Richard, you wanted to answer that one?
Yeah, I would say that every person is different, right? I mean, it comes to personal relationships, and sometimes, and a lot of these interviews were shot in a convention, right? And so we're able to get them all in one chunk, which was very lucky. On the other hand, there's other people that we chased and we couldn't get in as well. So it's a little bit of a scavenger hunt sometimes. It takes a little bit of luck and a little bit of inspiration.
So do you mind, and if you don't, I mean, I don't want to put you into a hot seat, but do you mind mentioning somebody maybe you tried to chase down and you just couldn't get? If you don't feel comfortable sharing that, that's fine.
I don't think it's relevant. I mean, I think I barely remember. Let's put it that way.
Okay, fair enough.
I think the movie kind of comes together the way it needs to. I think once you make these films, you start thinking that way. There's. I'm very happy for the one that we did get.
Yeah.
Put it that way, and I think we do have some great talent there.
Well, I love, I liked all the interviews. Nolan Bushnell is kind of a fascinating guy to me.
Yeah.
And he reminds me for some reason, every time I see him, I think of Donald Sutherland. But anyway, that's a tangent. So, but I thought I was very impressed with, the interviews you got, and the stories you told. One thing that your documentary probably either taught me or else I didn't realize this before, even though I've read stuff and watched stuff like this for years. Your documentary really told the Activision exodus from Atari better. I got it, right? Like, it's like, oh, I never realized it went down like that. You had these guys that worked at Atari, and they figured out that 4 of them were generating 60% of the profits for Atari and being paid $20,000 yearly. And so they ended up leaving because Atari got much more corporate. And, I knew that there was an Activision exodus out of Atari, but I never understood it in those terms. That these guys were like, whoa, wait a minute. we're making 60% of the profits for this company, and they're treating us like dirt. So that was. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean the research on this film, I mean, because it's such a vast history, right? I think that in itself would have been a great movie. Just that
right.
That intrigue between Atari and Activision, and that story itself is interesting enough to and certainly other stories that we ran into as well. You know, the end of Atari and the Rockstar, I think would make for a great story in just the rise of that company.
Right, how that happens.
Yeah, and other things as well. You know, certainly the developments into the future and how you can operate video games with your brain power and move pixels on the screen just thinking about them. I mean, there's so many evocative themes there, right, of what's going to happen to humanity. So right. I think the movie becomes kind of serious and solemn at some point, right, from just listing catalog of amazing titles to all of a sudden the impact on society and how it's changed the medical industry and how
right.
How has that different tentacles to different areas of industry.
Right. Well, there were a lot of cool little moments in there. You know, one was I started laughing because 4 or 5 times you guys had to show animated scenes of courtroom battles. I mean, the video game industry seems to go to court a lot. Would you both agree with that?
Absolutely.
And it was like every 5 minutes they were in court again. And it was usually like even the same people, but they were on different sides, or it was just so funny. But,
just imagine how it could have turned out if some of those, like if Atari had won the suit so that no other companies could make games for their console.
Right.
Imagine what the industry would look like.
That was a crossroads for the entire video game industry. And that was another thing that, I probably heard it before, but it just didn't sink in that, gameplay. And by the way, folks, if you're just now listening in, we are talking with Matt and Richard from Gameplay, the story of the video game revolution, which is a video game documentary that is, and before we finish, we'll talk about where people can watch this. I watched it on Google Play, but it is in a lot of different places that you can watch it. So we will talk about that. But one of the things that really I was like, wow, how big was that the judge did rule that Atari had no control over the cartridges that were plugged in to the old 2600, was it VCS, was that it? Video game console system. So, that was huge. That allowed Activision to basically eat their lunch. So,
then Nintendo got around that later by making a little chip to go inside the cartridge, and then they patented that. So, they could claim that you infringed on their patent, I guess, if you tried to pull Activision on Nintendo.
Right. Well, okay, so let me ask you guys this. I know the thing about when, because there was a video game crash, right? And that's another fascinating. I won't give away all this cool stuff in the movie, but there's this fascinating story of a guy who bought all these cheap cartridges and resold them to stores, and it helped contribute to the video game crash. And that's just you got to watch the movie just for that part. I love the intersection of business and my hobbies, and that's just fascinating to me. How all that came together to get this perfect storm for the video game crash. But I still don't get. I've heard this story several times. So Nintendo comes a few years later with the Nintendo Entertainment System, right?
Right.
And all the toy stores are like, no, there's no way. We do not want another video game console. And they're like, look, but it has Robbie the Robot. And suddenly it's not a video game console. It's a toy. I still don't get that. I am like, really? It's like they put a wig on it. And they're like, oh yeah, we don't recognize him anymore. It just blows me away. But I guess it worked because, Nintendo got their stuff back into the
Well,
I wonder how many people still have those little robotic buddies.
What was that, Matt? Who still has one?
Well, I'm just wondering how many people still have their ROMs.
Yeah.
I actually played with it for more than 10 minutes before they found Mario.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember people saying it doesn't work very well, but I guess it worked well enough to get the console back into the stores. So I guess it worked that well.
Yeah.
So
it did its job.
Okay, so I guess a lot of this stuff came out of Matt and Bill's books. So Matt, do you want to mention briefly which books were adapted for this documentary? And then also how close do you feel that the documentary reflects the books?
Well, pretty much it's the first book, Vintage Games, where it gets most of its content from. And then I wouldn't say it follows the book that closely because we didn't have any of those interviews in the book. That was all done afterward. So that's, I guess, the biggest difference between those two.
So it hit the
book. The original book, I'm actually working on the second edition of it right now. It'll be quite different. But the first edition is pretty much just alphabetical, chapter by chapter of all the most influential games of all time.
Okay.
Whereas the movie, it's more of a chronological story. It starts at the beginning, works its way through to the end.
Okay, so you and Bill, and pronounce Bill's last name for me if you would.
LeJudas.
LeJudas. Okay, so Matt Barton, Bill LeJudas.
Like LeJudas of Borg.
I am LeJudas of Borg. Vintage Games, and you're working on a second edition, but I think Vintage Games is in Amazon right now, right? I mean, if people wanted to get it, I think it's,
sure.
Yeah, it's still in print, right? Okay, so, and you've got Dungeons and Desktops, you've got, what was that other book that you just adapted all your?
We got Vintage Game Consoles, which is about the machines instead of the games.
Okay.
And then Honoring the Codes, one about Matt Chat.
Now, that's where you adapted your interviews in Matt Chat to a book, right?
Yeah, it's just basically some transcripts with some introductions at the beginning.
Well, I personally own and have a signed copy of Dungeons and Desktops, which has an amazing cover. That's not Larry Elmore, is it? Who did the cover of it?
Clyde Caldwell.
Clyde Caldwell. Great book. That's basically like the encyclopedia on the history of influential computer role-playing games. So make sure to look for that out there, folks. I love that book. Okay, so we got to wrap up here in about 3.5 minutes. I want to touch on a couple of things. Want to make sure to tell people, where can people watch this movie? And Richard or Matt, whoever wants to chime in on that, because there's multiple places. I mean, if you look out there in one of the main services, you're going to find it. But did y'all want to touch on some of the main areas where people can watch this movie?
Richard might know more about what's coming in the near future, but let's see. I guess it's on Voodoo. Is that right?
Is it
Voodoo?
Voodoo?
Anyway, Google Play, iTunes. Amazon.
It's on Vimeo. Is it not? It's on Vimeo,
on
correct?
Consoles like Xbox 360 store, whatever they call that, and then I think the Sony store. I'm kind of blanking on some of the names of these services, but as far as I know, it's not yet on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's on Hulu or not.
Well, hold on 1 second, Matt. He's actually trying to call me back, Jacob. I don't know if you can get him back on the line or not. Looks like we dropped Richard, but we'll try to get him back. So yeah, you could go to, you can go to gameplaymovie.com, which is linked at shaneplays.com in the show notes. You can go to gameplaymovie.com, and there's all the places there that you can watch it are listed. So
there's probably about a half dozen of them.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, I rented it for $3.99 on Google
Voodoo.
Play.
That's it.
Is it Voodoo?
VUDU.
Okay, yeah. So
right.
I rented it for $3.99. Good watch. Really enjoyed it. So.
Hello, I'm back.
Hey, yeah, we got you back. It's Richard. He's back.
Richard. I would say any folks that do watch the film, I'd really appreciate it if you could post some reviews of it on those whatever service you use. Just take a second to knock up a review.
So that's one of the
great.
Yeah, that's one of the things that y'all have found out just from me knowing you, Matt, and listening to you talk about the movie, is those reviews like on iTunes are huge. If you like the movie, rate it.
If you don't like the movie, I mean, just having lots of ratings.
Yeah, just having ratings helps. So that if you support this kind of thing, which I do. I mean, I often say that Matt, and by extension this movie, and Richard, this stuff is very important for historical purposes. Video games are a major part of our culture. And this stuff, I mean, I guarantee you years from now, Matt Chat and this movie and other things like it are going to be vital resources that people will use for their reference and research when they're studying the impact of video games and the history of video games and that sort of thing. So, but anyway, go to gameplaymovie.com And there you can learn more about the movie, and you can see all the places that you can watch it. Like I said, I watched it on Google Play for $3.99. Seamless experience. You know, you get it for 48 hours. Really enjoyed it. So another thing I want to mention, guys, we're going to have to wrap here in a couple of minutes. But I did want to ask, or I got to tell you this, just my own personal anecdote. All right, you know, y'all mentioned Pitfall in the game, right?
Right.
And you even show the clip where Pitfall Harry jumps on the rope and he goes da 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 da, and he goes across the pit or whatever. I'm going to share some Shane Plays personal history anecdote with both of you for the first time ever on the airwaves. So if y'all ever do another documentary or another book, that you can include this, because this stuff is riveting. My brother and I.
That's quite the build-up.
It is the build-up. So you know it's probably going to be like, wah, wah. So my brother and I, for some reason, we thought that sound, when it'd go, da, 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 sounded just like he was saying, cold beers to you. I don't know why, but that we did. So now you know. And everybody listening knows that. And I hope from now on, anytime you hear the Pitfall Harry sound, you're going to think cold beers to you. So now you know.
Okay.
Do you feel enriched? Do you feel enriched by that?
I feel like it was worth the price of the ticket, yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of the price of the ticket, I say and I think that Gameplay, the movie, is worth the price of the ticket. So if you're listening to this and you like video games, or even if you don't like video games, you like animation, go check it out. I think you'll really like it a lot. So, guys, I got other questions I could ask, but I won't. I want to give you a chance to make any final comments over the next minute or so, and then we're going to have to drop. I did want to compliment you, Richard, on that you were able to tell the arcade versus the console narrative separate from the PC narrative. Like you didn't just make it linear, right? And that was very difficult because the timeline of the arcade and video game consoles was different from the personal computer game timeline, right? So instead of just trying to have them leapfrog each other, you told them in separate narratives, but were able to tie it all together. So I just wanted to compliment you on that. That had to be difficult to find how to do that.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah, so I was very impressed with how you did that and tied it all together. And I also want to say the movie, and I wrote this down to make sure to get it right, was a, let me clear my throat, interesting juxtaposition of nostalgia and being teased with the future. So that's really liked it a lot. Go see Gameplay, the movie. You guys have any final thoughts you want to share before we drop? And I appreciate you so much for being on. Thanks so much for your time.
It's a pleasure being on, and thanks for promoting the film, and I hope lots of people get to see it. So I appreciate your thoughts on it. I think you're a great audience member.
Well, thanks. Are you working on any movies right now you want to plug real quick?
I'm packaging different things, not documentaries, but fiction films. But they're still in the oven. So hopefully they'll be coming out soon. I hope to be shooting soon. So nothing to plug just yet, but coming soon, hopefully. Okay,
great. All right. Thanks so much, Richard. Matt, anything you want to share with us before the great predator that is time ends our time together?
I don't think so. I really appreciate you having us on. Anybody does watch the movie and wants to get in touch with me, they can go to mattchat.us or just look for me on YouTube.
All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, and you can also find Matt on on Twitter at Matt Barton. Make sure to check out his YouTube channel, Matt Chat. It's good stuff. He also does the segment called L of the Week. Guys, that music says we're out of time. Thanks so much. Have a great day and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Shane.
And all the success with your movie. Folks, next week, we've got Michelle Specht of Star Trek Continues and much, much more geek news and just fun stuff. So make sure to join us on Shane Plays next Saturday, 1 p.m. Central, right here on 96.5 The Answer and online at 96.5 FM The Answer and on iHeartRadio. All right, so anyway, that's it. Sorry about that. I was thinking we were out of time, but we are just going to go out on this music. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget ShanePlays.com.